that I'm going to prepare here is a little bit of a special one. My dear old pappy has inspired me to create something that's really quite famous in my home state of California, in San Francisco. It's called a Joe's Special, and for those of you that have no idea what that is, it's like fancy scrambled eggs. So before you see everything that we're going to use today in my version of a Joe's Special. Normally, the base is ground beef, eggs, and spinach. So we have some frozen spinach here that's thawing. Instead of ground beef, I'm putting a little Belgian spin on it. We're going to put in some ground sausage with special herbs and spices in it from here in Belgium that I think will be really tasty. Also, normally you'll find some onion, you'll find some garlic, you'll find fresh or dried basil, you'll find oregano and salt and pepper and even nutmeg. The things I'm adding specially to it are some mushrooms, some serrano chiles for heat, and I've thought to throw in some fresh chives. So in just a second, we're going to start preparing all of our ingredients, and we will create our Joe's Special. We're going to start here with our vegetable prep. I'm going to begin with the onion. Very simple dice. So that finishes up our onion. Now when I slice mushrooms, I slice them every recipe. I slice them differently. Today, I'm just going to do a regular slice. And actually, I tend to like to leave my stems intact. But you might be wondering why it is I pop the stem out. And the reason that I do that is because when you slice the mushroom, it's simply easier to do when you can set it flat on your cutting board. And that's our mushrooms finished. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the garlic. I need to start by peeling it, of course. We learned how to do that during the Parmigiana di Melanzane recipe. Since I'm going to mince my garlic, I don't mind if I crush up the clove to get that skin off, chop the root, and mince, mince, mince. And there's our garlic finished. I think now we can move on to our serrano chiles. I'm going to start with 2 today. I might slice up 3 and then use them to taste because serranos can make things very spicy very fast if we're not careful. And there's our 3 serrano chiles. And if you remember from the eggplant parmesan video, we need to wipe this cutting board really quickly, otherwise everything's going to taste like serranos. Now we can chop our last 2 ingredients, which are going to be our basil and our chives. For the basil, we don't need this whole bunch. We probably need, I'll use that for some pasta tomorrow maybe, probably about this much. And they would like us to chop the basil. I'm going to do something close to what they call a chiffonade. This is not an actual chiffonade, but it means like little ribbons. And there is our basil. And finally our chives. These are going to be a garnish. So that means I'm only going to put them on top of the cooked food, which means I don't need that much. And that finishes our chives. The final thing that we're going to do is we're going to break and just very quickly beat our eggs. I have 6 eggs here, so I'm going to crack all these into my bowl. Boom! We've prepared all of our things that we need in order to prepare our Joe's Special. Now we're going to hop over to the stove and begin cooking all of this delicious food. So we are prepared to cook. I have this pan and back actually preheating still because I'm going to cook my mushrooms and my garlic separately of the rest of my ingredients. And this pan, which is already preheated, is going to have all the onions and spices and spinach and everything like that. So what I've done is I'm draining my frozen spinach because I don't want lots and lots of extra liquid in there. And I'm going to begin with a tablespoon of butter, if it will come on. Tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon of olive oil in my biggest frying pan. This is where I'll be cooking the bulk of my food. Give this a little mixy. As soon as the butter is melted, I can put in, if I was doing a traditional recipe, ground beef. but I'm going to be using this spiced ground pork. In she goes. And I'm just going to break this up like you do. This will need to be broken up further, but it'll be a little bit easier to do once it's cooked just a little bit more. So we're going to let it sit for a moment or two. Now that the pork is cooked almost entirely through, we can go ahead and add our diced onions. And we can add our serrano chiles. And we can stir those in and cook the onions until they are translucent, until they are clear. In the meantime, our mushroom pan is probably preheated, and so we're going to throw some butter in there. Indeed, it's even maybe a little bit too hot, but that's all right. I'm going to add my mushrooms and my garlic to that pan and stir these around. The mushrooms did not take long at all to cook, so I've just set them aside here where it's a little bit cooler. Now, this is about ready, so I need to add my spinach, I need to add my basil, my oregano, and I need to add my nutmeg. I'm going to start with the basil, since I've got it right here, and I'm going to add my spinach. I'm going to add my oregano, and I'm going to add a sprinkle of nutmeg. And get this nice and mixed in. Alright, this is perfect. This is finished. I'm going to let a little bit of water cook off of the pork beef mixture over here before I add the eggs. There's still a lot of moisture in there. So we'll be able to come back in a few minutes and finish this dish. So it's about that time. It is time to add the egg to our meat mixture. And we just want to cook this for a few minutes, 2-3 minutes, until the egg is set, just like scrambled eggs. So you just keep the mixture moving as the egg cooks. Make sure that you scrape the bottom of the pan. Alright, so this is looking pretty darn awesome. It's time to serve. Now this is a really, really easy presentation. All we've got to do is scoop a bunch of Joe's Special into our bowl. We're going to season with salt and pepper. We're going to put a few of our garlic mushrooms on top. Don't forget to get some of that butter from the bottom there, because butter makes everything better. And then finally, let's sprinkle some chives on top. And there you have Dani's version of Joe's Special. Typically this is served with something like garlic toast, and guess what I happen to have sitting right here? Some crispy, delicious garlic toast. Enjoy.